Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the Nerdic Pro podcast. How are we this evening? Welcome to a very special podcast. With me on the line is a former three-time National Wrestling Alliance NWA National Heavyweight Champion, a former Traditional Championship Wrestling Junior Heavyweight Champion, and the current Allied Independent Wrestling Federation, AIWF, World Heavyweight Champion, who's also just succeeded one entire year as the AIWF World Heavyweight Champion, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. Greg, how are we doing?
Rocking and rolling, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, as I've seen that it has been over the past few weeks, to actually join myself here this evening. So sort of talk us through, introduce yourself, because you obviously know who you are more than what I do. So sort of talk us through who you are, sort of bring us into how you first got involved within the wrestling business. Did you start off as a fan, like way back when, or was it something that you wanted to get into just for the sake of getting into it?
So I talk about this all the time, actually. My earliest memories of life aren't of, a birthday cake or a new bike or anything like that. My earliest memories of life are sitting on my grandmother's knee watching professional wrestling. So I was very much a fan growing up. I was, fanatical about it even then, and I just happened to grow up and end up having all the opportunities and all the blessings that I've had to be able to get in professional wrestling.
So, sort of, when was it that you had actually decided to first step into a wrestling ring and actually get involved with the wrestling business?
So the funny thing is, you got to think about the time period too. Like, we're talking about late 90s, early 2000, right? And, backyard wrestling and Matt and Jeff Hardy, that's how they broke in. And that was kind of the culture at the time, so myself and some of my buddies from high school, that's what we were doing. We were doing some backyard stuff, and we really wanted to break in the business. And it just so happens that Memphis Championship Wrestling, which was a developmental territory for the WWE at the time, came to our hometown once a month.
Yeah.
And they weren't doing very well. They would draw about 30, 40 people, on these things. And we're talking about, it had William Regal, it had Bryan Danielson when he was still the American Dragon under a mask. There was R-Truth. It was just, if I read you the entire roster, it would almost be comical of how many stars were on the roster at that time in developmental. So, like I said, they were coming to our hometown once a month, and they weren't doing very well. So one of my buddies, his dad was actually a police officer in our hometown. So he went up to Terry Golden, the promoter, and said, "Hey, listen, my son and his friends, they're trying to break into professional wrestling. Can you help them out?" And Terry Golden, being the genius that he is, said, "Well, here's some two hometown kids. Maybe if I put them on the card, we'll do better." So he said, yeah. So we had like a workout with him, and he said that, "I'll tell you what, next month when you guys come, you can have an intermission match." Right? So we went around for the entire month telling all of our friends we were professional wrestlers and we were making our debut and we were going to be in this intermission match and we were going to do this and that. So the night came, and intermission match turned out to be semi-main event, and there was well over 200 people in the building.
Wow.
So, but it was one of those things where Terry still protected the business because we weren't technically in the business yet, so we had our own locker room away from everyone. We weren't with the boys. We kind of came in, did our thing, and that was that. But like we worked for them for the next I want to say it was like 4, 5, 6 months maybe, and then eventually he lost his developmental deal, and then we caught on with a local promotion. So that's how we broke in.
Nice. So how was it actually stepping into the ring like for the first time? Was there like any nerves doing it in front of so many people, like especially like in front of your hometown crowd, or did you just get in there and then think, wow, like this is great sort of thing?
Well, a little bit of both. The first time I stepped in the ring was when we did the little training session with him, and it hurt so bad. You know what I mean? Like, it hurt so bad that I didn't know. Like, I don't know if I can do this or not. Right?
Yeah.
But then we had the match, and I was bitten by the bug. I mean, it was just it was electric to finally to do the things I'd always want to do in professional wrestling and have people react to it and see it and stuff like that. So I was hooked from the beginning.
So I'm aware that it wasn't actually long after you had actually left Memphis that you then started working for the NWA, right? Sort of talk us through into how you actually first got started working under the NWA territories as the NWA sort of would have still been back then.
Yeah, so once we left Memphis Championship Wrestling, we caught on with a local promotion, which was actually an NWA affiliate. It was NWA Mid-South. And that's where we really started training and really started, doing stuff like we were supposed to do and getting the knowledge and getting all the stuff that we really needed to do. And it was just one of those things where, just kind of, it fell in our lap. The NWA stuff, I'm a huge old school guy. I love the territory days. I love all that kind of stuff. So for me to work for the NWA at that time, it was a huge deal for me. My first title that I actually won was the NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight title. And if you go and look at the title history of that thing, it dates all the way back to 1939. It's got some of the biggest names in our business are part of that title. So I was just ecstatic to be a part of something like that. Especially in the very beginning, I love the business so much that I was happy just to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, getting on to, like the NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight title and the NWA National Championship, which is still a big active championship in the NWA. Sort of talk us through actually going into winning those titles and thinking of like the lineage, because I'm sure that you'd have seen growing up as a kid the NWA national title and the Southern Heavyweight Junior Heavyweight title like competed for. What did it mean for you as a wrestler to actually win two very prestigious championships in the world of pro wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, my name, the Golden Boy, isn't because my hair is blonde or because I had a gold watch or anything like that. It's because I was destined to be a champion. That's kind of the story of what we were doing. So, like, for me to be the Southern Junior Heavyweight champion, then eventually the national title, I said it then, I'll say it now. I cemented my name in this business by winning titles like that. I say it all the time. Like, in the past 30 years, I don't think anyone's been champion more times or more days than I've been champion, So like, that's where the name, the Golden Boy, comes from. And like, it all started with that NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight title that I think I ended up holding like 4 times or something like that. With the national title, obviously being a 3-time champion with it, and have my name alongside Dusty Rhodes and Tully Blanchard and Magnum TA and, Tommy Rich and Paul Orndorff and Mass Superstar and all these guys. It's really cool that I'm a part of that lineage.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've pretty much since the pandemic kicked in, I've been following, like the territory system as, over here in the UK, like not many people know much about the territory days. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, like I'm a bit of a, because of the podcast, I'm a bit of like a historian, like in that sort of fact. Like, you know what I mean? And when I first found out that you had actually held the NWA National Championship, which is still being contested for today, currently held by Thomas Latimer, I believe. And I was like, oh my God, do you know what I mean? And so like it was also, I believe, the late 2000s, early 2010s. Correct me if I'm wrong. That you'd actually started tagging with former member of is it the Midnight Express of
Yeah.
beautiful Bobby Eaton? In my
Yeah.
opinion, one of the greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. Co-host of mine, Stuart, massive Midnight Express fan. So, talk us through how you actually started tagging with one of the greatest tag team wrestlers in the history of tag team wrestling.
Well, really, let's go back to the beginning. Like I was talking about with my grandmother, sitting on her knee. I was a huge Bobby Eaton fan. Like when I was growing up, like as a kid, I loved all the good guys and I hated all the bad guys. But in that same instance, I was always drawn to the seamless Southern heels. You know what I mean? The Bobby Eatons, the Arn Andersons, the Tully Blanchards, the Ted DiBiase's, the Flairs. That kind of work for some reason really resonated with me. And like, even though I may not like Bobby Eaton, like when he was heel, like I knew if I saw Bobby Eaton against Tom Zink, I was going to see a great match. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things. Like I knew I was going to see something cool, so I wanted to watch it. And then as I got older and stuff like that, just Bobby was one of my favorite guys, period, in wrestling. So there became an opportunity, like I said, in 2000, I think it was 2008, 9, somewhere in there. He was going to be moving to Arkansas. And the plan was he was going to pick a young guy in Arkansas and he was going to pick a young guy in Tennessee. And he was going to tag with the Arkansas kid in Arkansas. He was going to tag with the Tennessee kid in Tennessee. And luckily, my name got thrown in the hat, and they picked me to be his Tennessee partner, which was amazing. And then somewhere along the way, the person they picked for Arkansas, someone got in his ear, and he actually turned down the opportunity. Someone said it wasn't a good idea, or he shouldn't do this, or he shouldn't do it. Whoever said it, I don't know, but that's kind of what happened. And like, I heard about it, and I just kind of like raised my hand, like, well, I'll do all of them. You know what I mean? Like, so we traveled Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri. We traveled everywhere for 2 years. We were Midnight Gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was one of those opportunities where Bobby was up in age. Obviously, he wasn't going to be able to wrestle a lot in singles matches. So my job as the young kid, which I was like 28, 29, somewhere in there at the time, my job was to, take the bumps and do the brunt of the match like that. And I was more than happy to do that. And then what actually ended up happening was the entire time we tagged, Bobby Eaton never let me take a pin. He took every pin at Midnight. He took the pin every time Midnight Gold took a pin. He would not let anyone beat me. Promoters would say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to beat Greg. And he would go, no, we're not beating Greg. We're beating me. He said, and he would tell me, he said, this, I'm already made. I'm already Bobby Eaton. You understand? Like, this is to get you over. This is for you. I want you to come out the other side of this better than you were. So it was a huge deal. And like, I tell that story to, other guys in the business, and they can't believe it because no one of that stature does that kind of stuff anymore, So he really always took care of me. And the thing with Bobby too was, he was older. He was having trouble. He was having some health issues. He was having trouble getting around. But every once in a while, man, I'd be wrestling with somebody that, maybe I'd known for a while or someone like that, and we had really good chemistry, and we'd be going, and I look over in the corner, and Bobby Eaton had that look in his eye like it was 1985 again, and I go tag him in, and all of a sudden he started going. You know what I mean? Like, he loved wrestling so much, and all he ever wanted to do was compete and wrestle and stuff like that. And there was just some times that he would just be like, he's not going to be the weak. Bobby Eaton's not going to be the weak link in any match. You understand? Yeah. Like, he's going to go out there and he's going to show everybody that he's still Bobby Eaton. and he would go out there and start going, and I would sit in the corner like I was a fan again. You know what I mean? Just, jaw dropped, watching in awe at one of my heroes who still had it.
Yeah. So, I'm aware that you also held some tag team titles with Bobby Eaton as well. Like, am I correct in saying?
Yeah. We held a few tags. Like I said, in Mississippi, I think in Arkansas, a couple around. We were really brought in more as if there was a local show that was having a bigger event, we were brought in as the stars for the event to work whoever the top tag team was. So, and that was a different position for me, obviously, because I was just a local guy that was trying to get on cards like everyone else. And all of a sudden we were the featured act, for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So that must have been like a pretty big thing for yourself, tag teaming and working with somebody who you'd grown up watching and work and like one of your idols and actually winning, titles like alongside that person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, like that, one of my heroes, definitely top 5 most influential guys to me. And like the fact that here's something too, Bobby Eaton is one of the greatest in-ring talents of all time, in my opinion. And the thing is, he's an even better person. He was one of the nicest guys in the history. There's not anyone in professional wrestling that has a negative thing to say about Bobby Eaton to this day. When his wife passed away, I called him to check on him, and all he did was ask me about my family, like how's my wife, how's my kids, how's my promotion going, that kind of stuff. Like he always was more worried about everyone else,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, you were also in Bobby Eaton's last ever match as well, wasn't you?
Yeah.
So, sort of talk us through like that final match of his, who it was against, and what it meant for you to be in his retirement match.
Well, we didn't know it was his retirement match at the time. I mean, we kind of suspected, but we weren't sure. We knew he was having health issues, and he was going to have to get something taken care of and stuff like that. It happened to be his last match. It wasn't one of these things where like, Ric Flair's last match or Steamboat's last match, or it wasn't one of those advertised things. He didn't get that opportunity. It was just he was having some health issues. He knew he was going to have to get them taken care of, and when he got them taken care of, that was kind of like, okay, that's it. You're done. Yeah. So, but it ended up being it was a 6-man tag. It was at a fair somewhere in Arkansas. You know what I mean? And like it was a really good match, and I was glad to be a part of it. But like I said, it wasn't one of those things that we had time to really think about because we didn't know it was Bobby Eaton's last match.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talking more on the NWA, when is it you actually finished working for the NWA? Like, was it in and around? Like, were you a part of Billy Corgan? Like when he took over the NWA, or like had you left beforehand?
Well, Billy Corgan kicked everyone out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like he bought the NWA from Bruce Tharp, and everyone's contract was coming up in October, and he just kind of mealed around and kind of talked to different people, and like there was talks about him, not renewing everyone's contract, and there was talks of him maybe doing this or doing that, and then about 2 weeks before everyone's contract ran out, we just kind of find out, hey, we're not getting renewed. So it really put a lot of promoters in a pinch, especially myself. I had to rebrand my entire company in 2 weeks. It was just a mess. I'm not a big fan of Billy Corgan in general. I did a seminar with him when he was in Vegas one year for the Cauliflower Alley, and just his mindset on professional wrestling and my mindset on professional wrestling are not the same. He believes that he's looking at it like it's entertainment. He thinks that, I'm I'm playing the character of the Golden Boy Greg Anthony. I'm not the Golden Boy Greg Anthony. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that assessment at all. Like, professional wrestling is made of guys that are these people. You know what I mean? Stone Cold Steve Austin is Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know what I mean? Ric Flair is Ric Flair. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I really didn't like it. And when I found out he was buying the NWA, I really wasn't happy about it. I made it very clear that I wasn't happy about it. And then, like I said, there was some talks of continuing things and maybe having a working relationship, but I never physically got to talk to Billy Corgan myself. And I was one of the top promoters in the NWA at the time. And, he just, I think that what he does is he promotes faux old school, which is like they're pretending to be old school, but then they're not really promoting the old school ways or how it's actually done.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples of that is when NWA Power first came out. Everyone was ecstatic. Everyone's like, "Oh, this looks so great! It's so old school. The arena looks awesome. The ring looks awesome. It's this, and this." And like everyone was just jumping on board. And then the NWA actually put out a thing saying, "Hey, we're not your throwback company. We're going to be this progressive company. We're not this. We're not that. We're not trying to be this, this nostalgia kind of thing that you guys are making us out to be." And then a couple weeks after that, Edge actually tweeted that, "Oh man, I love this. It's so old school. Good job, guys." That kind of thing. And then all of a sudden NWA is like, "Oh, thank you so much, Edge. We try," and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's so hypocritical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Either you're old school or you're not. There's a lot of guys out there that pretend to be their old school, but then when it comes down to it, they'll take the booking with Joey Ryan where he did the dick flip. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They pretend to be old school, but then because they want to be in with the cool kids, they'll talk about how great Orange Cassidy is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, either you're old school, either you're Harley Race, either you're, that era, or you're not. You know what I mean? I think it's very black and white about that. And I'm very old school about that kind of stuff. So, I don't wish anyone ill will. Anyone that works for Billy Corgan. I got friends that work there. Tim Storm was one of my closest friends. You know what I mean? He works over there. There's a lot of other guys that have worked for me, and we've worked each other that are there, and I'm glad that they're getting the exposure. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of this version of the NWA.
Yeah, like as far as I'm aware, it was Billy Corgan that had actually finished off like the territories, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he didn't renew anybody. And then all of a sudden, the NWA went from an alliance of promoters to basically a one-man garage band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. Like, I love music, right? I'm a big music fan. I know a lot of music history and stuff like that too, but I'm not going to produce the Smashing Pumpkins' next album.
Yeah.
You understand? Just because I'm a music fan doesn't mean I'm capable of doing that side of the job. Billy Corgan may be a wrestling fan, may really love our business or whatever it is. I just don't think he has the skill set to promote or book professional wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. Some people may argue that William Patrick Corgan is more of a rock star than what he actually is, a wrestling promoter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, would you say that that's arguable, if you know what I mean?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't discredit the things that he's done in the music industry at all. I mean, obviously Smashing Pumpkins have built a brand and he sold millions of albums and he's very successful at that. But I look at his product and I look at his mindset in professional wrestling, and you're talking to a guy that I consider myself a wrestling booker at the core of everything I do. Like, I consider myself to be have a mind for this business. And when I see the decisions that he's made and stuff like that, it bothers me. It bothers me because I've studied the history of booking. I've sat in the car with J.J. Dillon. I've sat down with the Bill Dundees, who I've sat down with the Bill Wattses. You understand? I've picked these guys' brains about how to do this, and Billy Corgan doesn't do it like they did.
Yeah. So, like, as far as I'm aware, he's now trying to build the territories back up, isn't he? Like, I believe it was October-ish last year where they started off with NWA Exodus, I think it was,
Yeah.
or something like that. And they've now got one in Chicago, I believe. And then there was a show a couple of days ago in Knoxville called Back to the Territories,
Yeah.
or something like along them lines. Is this something that you've been following, and like, is this something that you think that Billy Corgan can actually grow into potentially being how it was before Billy Corgan took on?
No, I don't think he is, because I don't think he's going to give that much reign. We had probably 20 to 30 promotions at that time, and I think Billy is he's handpicking his friends to do it. And it would take at this rate, it would take him 20 years to get 20 promotions. You know what I mean? And I think he's more worried about getting sued than he is anything else. I think he's more worried about something happening at a local independent show, and because Billy Corgan is attached to it, the NWA is attached to it, then ultimately he's going to be the one that gets sued out of it. You know what I mean? So I don't think he's willing to take that kind of risk. As far as the territories coming back, I think the AIWF is leaps and bounds ahead of him in that sense. We, like I said, we have, I think, 144 promotions across 36 countries or something like that. It's a legitimate world title. It's a legitimate, governing body of professional wrestling. And, it's fun to see. I've got friends all over the world, all over the country that do this, and it's fun to see everyone's product. I always thought and this is what I pitched when I was part of the NWA, is I think the NWA should be basically like a buffet of wrestling. Whatever you like, we can provide it. You know what I mean? So, but that wasn't their thought process. Their thought process was, we need to be McDonald's. We need to be where all the rings are the same colors and this guy and that guy. And it's like, no. Don't you understand? That's the selling point. If we had an NWA at the time, if we had an NWA network and had all of us on it, you know what I mean? Then people could pick what they liked. They could pick if they liked Mid-South, or if they liked California stuff, or they liked, the guys down in Texas. I mean, it's just, you could see everyone would have their own chance, Yeah. But sometimes I'm the single voice of reason sometimes.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned about promoting shows as well. Like, sort of talk us through how you first got into the promoting side of things.
So, for me, like I said, I studied the booking, I studied promoting, I studied all these things. And in my area of West Tennessee, we were just having a lot of trouble. Yeah. We were having alcohol, we were having drugs, we were having pedophiles on shows. It was a extremely bad environment for this, to which I did not wrestle in my own hometown for almost 7 or 8 years, because I would go to Walmart and I would tell people I'm a professional wrestler, and I would kind of get that weird look. And it always bothered me, because I'm so passionate about professional wrestling. I love wrestling so much. You know what I mean? It broke my heart that this is the kind of reputation it had in my hometown. So for me, it was out of necessity. I wanted to bring something that was completely family friendly, and we were going to do it the way that I thought should be doing, because there was a lot of guys that thought that my way was too antiquated, that it was the dinosaurs' way to do things, that my way would not work anymore in 2014 at the time, right? Yeah. And I just knew it would, and I was willing to put my money where my mouth was. So when we started, that's what it was. We were going to be old school. We weren't going to do all the spot stuff. We weren't going to do all the crazy stuff. We weren't going to do blood and guts violence. We weren't going to do, cussing, and we weren't going to allow alcohol in our locker room or any kind of drugs or any kind of thing like that, and like it just started gradually changing the culture in this area, and to where, now, not only are we family friendly, but we're also Christian based. I've got a ministry that's attached to the wrestling, and that's the thing. Our guys, we hold a prayer together in the locker room before matches now, and it's been one of the most rewarding things of my life, is being able to, lead some people to Christ. And it all happened because of professional wrestling. It all happened because, God saved my life through professional wrestling, physically and spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've recently had on a gentleman by the name of Gareth Angel Thompson, who promotes Kingdom Wrestling over here in England. I believe he's also an affiliate of the AIWF, I believe. Yeah. He has. I can't for the life of me remember what his church is called. I think it's called Fountains Church, but based up in Bradford, up in Yorkshire. And like he runs shows in like inside the actual ministry hall, like, if you know what I mean. And like he does like exactly that, does prayers and even does baptisms like before a show as well. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say that you also work alongside your local community to bring people together? Because what Gareth at Kingdom, his like original site into starting up GT Ministries, like as it was before, was to bring Christians into wrestling and bring people involved in wrestling to Christianity. Do you know what I mean? So would you say that it's like a good thing to bring the two sort of bits and pieces together, if you know what I mean?
So this is kind of be a long answer, but let me kind of start at the beginning. So originally, when it started, like I said, it was a family friendly thing, and I really was just trying to change the perception of what was going on. So I wanted to be a part of the community. I wanted parents to be able to bring their kids. I wanted, if you brought your 7-year-old daughter or your 70-year-old grandmother, you weren't going to hear anything out of the way at our show. That was kind of the basis of everything. And we wanted to be a part of the community. We did stuff with Community Cancer Fund and St. Jude and just a bunch of different things like that. And then in 2017, I had major heart surgery. It turned out that I was born with no right arteries in my heart, and I had developed 2 70% blockages and a 90% blockage in my widowmaker. And I was wrestling 30 minutes a night with this heart condition. And I was having chest pains, severe chest pains, and I would wrestle a little bit. And then when the chest pains came on, I would like grab a hold or, rest somehow, and then they would kind of subside and I would get back to wrestling. And I was wrestling like that for months. And like I said, I had to have emergency surgery. It was actually the week I was supposed to wrestle Tim Storm for the NWA World Heavyweight title that week, and I found out about the 90% blockage and that I had to have major heart surgery. And it was just one of those things where at the time, I wasn't a Christian. But I felt the power of prayer kind of wash over me. And I kind of felt the presence of God kind of thing. And it just completely changed my life. So for the next couple of years, here I am, I'm working on myself as a Christian, and I'm trying to, do right by myself. And we're a Christian company, but we're not a Christian company. We're just a Christian company because I'm the owner and I'm Christian. but we
Yeah.
weren't a fully Christian company yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then, a couple years ago, I had where they went in, they did a scan of my heart, and they saw another blockage, and they were afraid that, well, if we see another blockage, then this time we're going to have to go and we're actually going to have to do, bypass surgery on you if ends up being true. So I go in for a heart cath, and I prayed about as hard as I could pray about any of this kind of stuff, and the doctor doing the heart cath kind of stops in the middle and kind of pulls all the equipment away. And he looks at me and goes, "We don't see anything wrong with your heart. The blockage that they said was there is not there. And even the stenosis that's supposed to be in your veins around your other stents that we did before, those are completely fine." So I took that as a miracle.
Yeah.
As many people should. And it was from that moment on that I just kind of said, listen, if we're going to be a Christian company, we're going to be a Christian company. You know what I mean? So I created, I had this thing about, I always wanted our own ministry anyway. So Genesis 32:24 is ministries. Genesis 32:24 is a story about Jacob wrestling God on the mountain. And he wrestled with him to the breaking of day. So that's our ministry. And I started, like I said, we started praying before the shows. We started holding services on Sundays at my building. We started doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And then little by little, things really started to change for us in a very, very good way. And to your point, yes, because in the Bible, Jesus doesn't hang out with the churchgoers. Jesus was down with the prostitutes and the thieves and the tax collectors and all that kind of stuff, because those were the people that needed help.
Yeah.
So yes, we're Christian. Yes, we want other Christians to come, but at the same time, we're ministering to people that maybe haven't found that way yet. So we minister to people in wrestling. My pastor, he comes to a lot of the shows, and people walk up to him and just start asking him religious questions, or please pray for me, this is going on. We're changing so much in people's lives just by being there and just being, an option for people in that way. So that's one of the proudest things I am. The proudest I am of things is the fact that we've been able to do this for our guys and for our community.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say that you've definitely helped out to what you wanted to do, like in helping people out, or like would you say that it's like a working sort of process?
It's always a work in progress. There's always more we can do. We in our ministry, we tithe, we take offerings and that kind of stuff, and that money doesn't go to paying rent on the building, or it doesn't go to paying utilities on the building. It doesn't go to anything to do with me or the company. It goes. I use that money and I go help people in the community. I pay people's electric bills. I pay people's utility bills. Sometimes if I see a family that looks like they're struggling in Walmart, I'll pay their groceries for them. You know what I mean? Like, I use the money to actually physically help people do things in their lives, because I feel that's what God has called me to do. And it's not me. I keep saying me, but it's not me. It's all glory to God, because he's the one that's, put me in this direction.
Yeah. Like it's good. Like I personally think it's good that you're actually helping people out, like in the community, rather than watching someone struggle. Do you know what I mean? And what have you? Do you know what I mean? And yeah. So you are obviously the current Allied Independent Wrestling Federation's AIWF World Heavyweight Champion, and I believe it was yesterday or the day before that you had actually surpassed one entire year as the AIWF World Heavyweight Champion. So talk us through you actually getting started with the AIWF and working under the AIWF banner.
Well, like I said, we were part of the NWA, and I felt really burned by it. I really didn't want to be a part of another thing like that, for someone to have that kind of hold on my own company. But after talking to, the powers that be at the AIWF and kind of talking to other members and other people that have been associated with it for years, it felt like the right time. So a couple of years ago, we joined the AIWF. A couple of my guys, had opportunities, and they were actually the AIWF national heavyweight champions for a little bit. And it just kind of gave me an opportunity to see what was out there. And before I knew it, I had a shot at the AIWF World Heavyweight title. Ty Tyson came to my hometown to defend that title, and I was able to defeat him and walk away as the AIWF World Heavyweight Champion. And it was a year ago yesterday. So it's been a great ride. The AIWF thing, I think we've increased its visibility. I think we've increased, people knowing those initials, AIWF. And I'm excited for the future and, what more we can do,
Yeah. So I had only originally heard of the AIWF in, I want to say, April, May sort of time last year, when I'd because I know a tag team based over here in the UK known as the UK Pitbulls, and they're actually former AIWF tag team champions. And back in 2000, back in the mid 2000s,
Right.
And and I'd sort of vaguely followed AIWF Mid South, etc. for a while, and then it was sort of when I got in contact with yourself to appear here tonight, when I'd actually properly started knowing of the AIWF and actually knowing that they are like an international governing body of pro wrestling, like the NWA. And I'm like, oh wow, do you know what I mean? And so what's sort of your stance on the AIWF, like, and being the world champion? Like, is being the world champion like a busy schedule? Because obviously there's 140 some odd promotions spread out across 47 countries at the moment. Do you know what I mean? So, like, what's the schedule like for yourself? Like, is it busy or?
It's pretty busy. It just kind of is like I basically have an open contract with the AIWF, and they kind of negotiate dates with other companies that'd like to bring me in. June is, this Saturday I'm actually in Harrison, Arkansas. I'm going to be defending the title there. In a couple weeks, I'm going to be in Middle Tennessee, which is about 3 hours from me. I'm defending the title on that show. At the end of the month, I'm in Jonesboro, Arkansas for a Memphis Legends deal with Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee and, Dr. D. David Schultz and a bunch of other guys. And then next month I'm in, Louisiana. And then in between all these, I'm with my home promotion, Pro Wrestling Mid-South. So it's like, it's a steady schedule. I've been to Chicago, I've been in the Carolinas, there's just a lot of things going on. I got Alabama coming up. I mean, it keeps you pretty busy. So.
So is wrestling something that you do like as a full-time sort of career then, or?
Yeah, I'm a full-time wrestler.
Oh wow! So was this something that you'd? So going back to when you first started out with Memphis Championship Wrestling, like, was getting involved with wrestling full time something that you had your eyes set on, or was it something that you got involved with full time, like as a last minute sort of result?
The goal was always to be a full-time wrestler, and it took a long time to get to that point, but I worked and I persevered, and we made a lot of sacrifices, me and my family, to do things, and like it's just one of those things we made it work, and I can honestly say that I'm probably one of the few guys that's never been signed by a major company. I've never been signed by WWE or TNA or AEW or anything like that. And I make a full-time living in professional wrestling. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that if you want to do it, you got to work at it. You know, there's a lot of kids out there nowadays that, you know, I think they really just want things handed to them like that, you know, and you got to go out there and you got to do it. I don't think I ever turned down a booking. I wanted to wrestle as much as humanly possible, you know, and I've had over 4,000 matches, you know, but by the territory standards, that's, you know, not a lot, but by today's standards, that's quite a bit of matches, you know. But the goal was always to be, you know, a full-time wrestler. So, when I was 5 years old, you know, I talked about being on my grandmother's knee. Well, there was a family reunion I went to, and everybody, you know, they kind of, you know, tussle your hair and ask you what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I told all of them I'm gonna be a professional wrestler. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the coolest things is that, you know, here I am. I turned 43 years old tomorrow, and I'm a professional wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, my mind's gone completely blank. But yeah. So, talk us through like what you've got date wise coming up then, between now and other matches that you've got coming up.
So, like I said, this Saturday night I'll be in Harrison, Arkansas. I'm going to be taking on the villain Rockwell from Oklahoma, and he's going to have Stephen E in his corner. So that's going to be interesting. And then in a couple weeks, I'm at Premium Pro Wrestling in Middle Tennessee, and I take on Eric Draven, who runs Supreme Wrestling in Indiana, and we're putting all of our titles on the line there. So I may come home with, you know, 3 titles that day. Then on June 29th, I'm in Jonesboro for the Memphis Legends thing, and I believe I'm taking on David Jason Rose, which is he's kind of an American version of William Regal.
Right, yeah.
So I'm taking him on in Jonesboro. Hopefully I'll be able to, all these dates too is if I lose the title or whatever, whoever wins the title will assume my championship dates.
Yeah.
So, and then next month in July, I'm going to the Gulf to Louisiana, down in Cajun country to wrestle. So that's gonna be big in Morgan City, Louisiana. There should be about 1,000 people at it. So we're excited, man. We got a lot of big things going, and like I said, I'm just excited to be the AIWF World Champion. I think that we've increased the visibility. I'm happy to be the World Champion. I hope people see me as a throwback champion like that Harley Race, like those guys, you know, were back in the day. You know, I think we need more of that.
Yeah, definitely. So you've also said that you've wrestled upwards of 4,000 matches. Like, would you say that you've got any particular favourite matches out of so many?
Man, it is really hard to narrow it down, but just a few high points, you know, like Jay Lethal. I got to wrestle Jay Lethal one night, and it was one of those things where we really clicked. You know what I mean? Like he didn't know me from Adam, and of course you've seen pictures of me. I'm not a bodybuilder. You know, I don't look like your standard WWE wrestler. You know what I mean? So he didn't know what to expect out of it, but we went out there and we tore the house down. And he was pleasantly surprised, you know, by it, and like to the extent which I'm also friends with Rhino, and like him and Rhino were somewhere together, I think up in New York or somewhere like that, and like I think Rhino mentioned me, and then Jay Lethal said, "Yeah, Greg Anthony," and he was like, they started like putting me over in front of the entire locker room in New York, you know, talking about how I was, you know, one of the best independent guys they had seen, blah blah blah, you know, and that kind of stuff makes you feel good when you hear about that kind of stuff, You know, match wise too. You know, I had a lot of great matches with a guy named Christian Jacobs. We had I Quit matches and ladder matches and things of that nature. The match that I came back, my first match back after my heart surgery was something special to me. You know, because obviously I've been through so much, and not too long after that, about a year after that, I had a 1 hour Ironman match with Jacob Edwin, and that one's on YouTube if people want to go watch it. And the fact that I was a heart patient and I had a 1 hour Ironman match, you know what I mean, was something that I got emotional about. So, you know, stuff like that. It's always those things. And, you know, obviously winning the AIWF world title is right up there too. Winning the national title, winning the tag titles with Bobby Eaton. I won tag titles with Hacksaw Jim Duggan too, as well. Yeah. So, I mean,
Oh, wow.
So just if you got to tell 10-year-old me all the cool stuff that I've gotten to do, I probably wouldn't believe you. But I'm very, very blessed. All glory to God. I'm so glad that I was able to do half of it.
Yeah. Like, I know that you won tag titles with Bobby Eaton, but I didn't know that you won it. Like, that you won tag titles with Jim Duggan as well.
Yeah. So Jim Duggan.
So going on to Jim Duggan, like, where did you win tag title? Like win a tag title with Jim Duggan then?
So we had a tag match at a high school in Cleveland, Tennessee, and it was for the Legends and Lions tag titles. And we won the tag titles. And then I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, Jim had to have he got cancer again and had to go back into treatment and stuff like that. So we had to vacate the titles. However, dream come true. I did win tag team titles with Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. See, like, you learn something new every day, don't you? But yeah. Like, is there anyone in the business that you've either not worked with before, or you've not worked with in a while, that you'd like to share the ring with?
Well, I mean, one of my best friends and a guy that I owe a lot of this stuff to is a guy named Matt Riviera.
Yep.
You know, he owned Traditional Championship Wrestling, and you know, Traditional Championship Wrestling was an international company. I mean, we were on in other countries. We were, you know, in my opinion, at the time, we were ahead of Ring of Honor as far as the company goes, as far as production goes, and things of that nature. It just didn't have the longevity like it wanted to. But, you know, Matt, this is why I tell young guys, like, you never know where opportunity is going to come from, because this is around the time me and Bobby Eaton were tagging, and Riviera wanted to bring in Bobby Eaton, but he wanted to bring in the Midnight Express. He wanted to bring in Jim Cornette and, you know, those guys and stuff like that. And they just weren't taking bookings together, you know? So he's kind of on the fence about bringing me and Bobby in together. Well, I do some random show in Arkansas, and, you know, it's one of those things where, like, it doesn't do well. There's only like 12 people in the crowd, right? Yeah. The promoter comes up and says, "Hey guys, you know, it didn't do well like we thought to, you know, if you still want to wrestle, you can wrestle, but we can't guarantee any pay," that kind of thing. I was like, "Well, I'm here, I'll wrestle. I want to wrestle anyway," right? That's how I got to, like we talked about, that's how I got to 4,000 matches anyway. I always wanted to wrestle. Yeah. So I go out there with this kid that had just been trained. He'd only had a couple matches, and we go out there, we have a really, really good match. I mean, a really solid match. And I get to the back, and Riviera goes, "How long you been training the kid?" And I said, "Well, he's not my kid. He's so-and-so's kid. I just met him." He said, "You had that match with a kid you never met before, and he's only had like 3 matches?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay." And then he booked me on everything he's ever done since. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like I said, he ended up being one of my best friends. You know, he's actually part of the Arkansas State House of Representatives now. He's actually into politics. He's the highest ranking professional wrestler other than Jesse Ventura in American politics / wrestling. So he's, like I said, he's not wrestling right now. He's retired from wrestling. I don't know if he'll ever come back because, obviously he's found something he really loves with the politics and things of that nature. So, but he's someone I would love to tag. At one time, I believe he and I were the best tag team in the National Wrestling Alliance. Me and him should have been the world tag team champions. Didn't happen for lots of different reasons, but he's still one of my best friends, and I can't thank him enough for everything he did.
Yeah. So, is there anywhere that you've not worked before that you'd like to go to, like anywhere like abroad that you like to wrestle? Or?
I mean, my dream has always kind of been Japan. I've always wanted to wrestle in Japan a few times, and it's come close so many times, and just it kind of falls through at the last second. Maybe one day it'll happen, maybe not. I'm not going to be heartbroken if it doesn't. It's just I love to wrestle there. I love to wrestle with you guys over in England. I'd like to, Canada. I've got, I can go to Canada. I've got some buddies up there too, that have asked me to come up there once. I don't think I'll do the death tour like I wanted to do 15 years ago, but maybe I'll go to Canada one day. It's just internationally would be fun, but at the same time, I'm happy, doing what I'm doing and being where I'm at and teaching the younger generation and, just being able to, I've got two kids that are fixing to be 17 and 15 in July. It's nice to be here with them and watch them grow up and go to their ball games and go to their different stuff and, not have to be on the road so much.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of you working with Matt Riviera, like you've also held a couple of tag titles with him. Didn't you also hold the traditional championship wrestling tag titles with him?
Yep.
At one stage. So traditional championship wrestling, like, was this something that you would have liked to have continued on to today, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, unfortunately, traditional championship wrestling, in my opinion, it had one of the best rosters of wrestlers that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? Like when you talk about young, hungry, guys that really get what professional wrestling is about and they want to make it work. I mean, that was one of the best rosters I'd ever seen. Unfortunately, there is a Southern bias in American wrestling. Yeah. And with the wrestling media, if you're not above the Mason-Dixon line, sometimes you don't get the coverage that you need to. We were a Southern-based company. We were like Bill Watts' Mid-South, of today. And, if we would have got the same exposure that Ring of Honor got, if we would have got the same exposure, maybe MLW, some of those other promotions, if we would have got the equal exposure, we're not saying more exposure, we're just give us an equal footing as some of those other companies, then we could have made a real difference, I think. But it was just like we never could get over that hump, and I don't think it was anyone's fault within the company. I just think it was a cultural thing.
Yeah, definitely. Greg, is there anything that you'd like to add onto the podcast this evening?
Man, I just appreciate you having me on. I'm glad that you're doing this. I love talking about wrestling. If anytime you want to have me back on, I'd love to go more depth into more things. I mean, I can talk about wrestling all day long, and people have bared the brunt of that at times. But I mean, I love talking wrestling. I'm glad you're doing this. The more we can educate fans and the more we can educate other people about what's going on and the stories, this kind of stuff helps our business thrive and strive and live forever.
Yeah, and honestly, I really appreciate you take the time to appear on the podcast tonight. I'm in exactly the same boat. Like I'm 19 now, and like I've been a massive wrestling fan since the age of 4. This was going up to WrestleMania 25. Like the Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so and what have you? Do you know what I mean? And
You're just a baby.
yeah. Sorry,
You're just a baby.
I know. In it.
WrestleMania 25, I was like, I had kids when that was out.
Yeah, this was 2009. I literally I turned 4 years
Yeah,
old.
my youngest was just born in 2009. So yeah.
Oh wow, fair enough. Yeah, I was born in November of 2004, and I turned 4 in November of 2008. And yeah, so, but yeah, and yeah, so and then growing up watching shows like in the local area. Funnily enough, actually, just up the road from where I'm from is where Nick Aldis grew up, and yeah, so actually went to the same high school as him, and yeah, like in my hometown, and yeah, so got to see a young Nick Aldis wrestle before he. Literally just before he went out, like came out to the States to work for TNA, and
Right.
yeah, so because he also started up his career with this other fellow who promotes shows around here, a fellow who wrestles as Jimmy Star. He promotes Falling Star Wrestling around here, and yeah, so, but yeah, so. But yeah, again, like I absolutely love chatting wrestling, and like especially since I started refereeing 18 months ago, I've loved talking about it like a million times before. Do you know what I mean? And quite a few people say for a 19-year-old, like I literally speak about wrestling more than what I do anything else. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, just obviously goes to show about passion, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so there are some worse things that I could be doing, like let's say.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, so, but yeah, so, but honestly, Greg, I really cannot thank you enough for taking the time this evening to join. Something I forgot to mention before we went live. When we do finish, I'm going to end it, and then we'll still be in the lobby, if you know what I mean. And yeah, so, but yeah, anyways, Greg, it's been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the Nerdic Pro podcast, my name has, as per usual, been your owner of the Nerdic Pro podcast, and this has been the first podcast to take place under the AIWF, the Allied Independent Wrestling Federations Network. That should hopefully be up within the next few days up on the AIWF network. With me on the line has been former 3-time National Wrestling Alliance NWA National Heavyweight Champion, the current Allied Independent Wrestling Federation's AIWF World Heavyweight Champion, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. Greg, once again, it's been a pleasure, massive pleasure to have you on this evening, and I'm sure that well, I hope that we can arrange something for you to appear back here on the Nerdic Pro podcast once again. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Appreciate you.
yeah, but yeah, don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, next Tuesday, I shall be welcoming on current NWA star, the one half of the Looks That Kill tag team, current participant in the 2024 Crockett Cup of Brian Idol. Then the following week, I shall be welcoming on Executive Director of the AIWF, Mr. Matt Classic Creed. And yeah, so 2 very big podcasts coming up. So yeah. Anyways, Greg, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all very much to those of you that have been watching live. And I shall be seeing you all later. Goodbye.